Thank you, Jen. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I have a very, I think I've spoken of this before, but I have a very strong, when Jan hands me the incense and comes right through the screen. and when Jan hands me the incense and I say thank you, Robert Aiken used to do, like he did, I was his head of practice for some years, and I'd stand at the altar like that with incense burning. And sometimes he'd be late getting in and be standing there for half an hour or something. It was great. And then, particularly in the morning, he'd come in. It was really dark, and he didn't want you to have. He wanted you to put the incense right out in front of his nose, and you have to hold the incense down low so he can pick it up high and put it into the incense pot without burning his hands. Which I notice every time I give people incense at a public occasion, like a funeral, for example. I'm always trying to get them, grab it above my hands. you, you won't burn your hand on the other incense sticks and things like that. But there's a kind of sweetness about that passing it silently in the dark, the incense being passed from the head of practice to the Roshi. And then he would say, thank you. And that was like more than was usually said. So when I say thank you to Jan or Chris, it's a ripple from long ago. Now I'm just taking you in. Suddenly, that thing that happens in session, I suppose it's just the nature of awakening where everything falls away and gets stripped away and washed away, and here we are, you know. And we can't be persuaded. This is why rah isn't actually that useful in session, because you have to know it for yourself and feel it for yourself. And the sixth ancestor, the sixth ancestor's first teaching job was to give a koan to the person who was chasing him, trying to harm him, and get back Buddy down his rope. And he gave him the koan in the original face. And the warrior monk was awakened. And he said, and burst into tears. And he said, now I am like someone who has tasted water and knows for himself whether it is cold or warm. So we know for ourselves whether it's cold or warm. We know for ourselves. You can feel it. I can say till the cows come home, or till any particular time. Oh, we're all connected in the universe and the net of Indra, but when you know it for yourself, no explanation is needed. So what meditation does is, I think it immerses us, and we're saturated with. We're not setting out to solve a particular problem, because that just leads to the problem of spinning around in our minds and worrying. And I mean, that's okay, but meditation does this stranger and deeper thing where it puts us in the way of things. It immerses us in the universe. And so the koan today is in the Sea of Ise. 10,000 feet down, there is a single stone. I want to pick it up without getting my hands wet. A single stone. I want to pick it up without getting my hands wet. And so that's the koan actually has more questions than that because it's a koan and goes on. But there's something marvelous about 10,000 feet down. I want to pick up that stone. So, so that's our koan for tonight. And there's basically a thing that happens in Zen where whatever it is I wanted to fix or heal or change about my life, it cannot be changed by the usual process of step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, or even by taking leaps. It's changed by getting saturated in sesshin and in this that we're doing, this. What does it say? Saturated this. And we can tell there's something true about that. And it's easier to see in sesshin, touching, to touch the heart, to touch the mind, It's easier to see or experience or have come over us. There's this. And that's why it's always so hard to explain, because it's this. So, 10,000 feet down, there's a single stone. And in the Sea of Ise, Ise is a sacred sea in Japan. And on the Sea of Ise is kind of the national inari, the kind of supernatural fox shrine, who can bring about healing and tricks and wisdom and love and all sorts of things. In the sea, 10,000 feet down. And so you're in a kind of boat. You're in some sort of boat, probably small with an engine. And engines always look a bit cranky in old boats, They've got paint coming off the side of them, and but they work cleanly and smoothly, ideally. And you're puttering out to sea, and then you get out of sight of land, and you look over the side of the boat and think, well, this is what I came for. And over you go into the sea. And even though you have no apparatus with you, you start sinking and down you go. And you can tell that somehow you're in a strange place in meditation, that you're sinking through the ocean and you can breathe. You're like the great Irish hero, Con Eda. His little pony took him under the water in Loch Earn, and they could both breathe, and they kept traveling. In fact, people could attack them with fire under the water, but they had to be under the water to have the transformation. And so there's something has to be purified and washed in us. And the meditation's doing that. And so down we go in the sea, and we start sinking. And at first, as you know, there's sunlight and you can see things in the ocean. The shoal of fish comes by, and perhaps a dolphin or two, some spinner dolphins hopping. You can see they're above you, and they're a little curious and come down and nudge you, but you're just sinking and sinking. And down you go. And you look around. And as you get deeper, it gets darker, but things are still visible. You see great whales upright, sleeping, just sitting there, motionless, sleeping. They don't pay any attention to you. sinking past them. And a great shark or two comes by, but you're somehow not in the domain in which they can harm you. And you nod to them. They don't take any notice, but nonetheless, courtesy never hurts with sea monsters. And down you go and you sink, and you notice that there are luminous, as it gets darker, you see smaller, luminous fish with little, like, lures off the top, like a fishing line that glows and trying to get someone to snap at it. And you see wrecks. They're always fascinating to humans because wrecks are fascinating. Because there's something about the way the great ocean takes us all, and takes particularly the things that we planned that wouldn't go down, that wouldn't sink, like the Titanic, or the Endurance, Shackleton's great wooden ship, still like sunk, but still existing under the ice shelf in Antarctica, under the Weddell Sea, where he left it over 100 years ago. So you go down, and you just notice them, and they're all galleons with, I don't know, there seem to be chests and things spilled out of them, and you can see that, and the fish swim in and out of the portholes. And down you go, and down, down, down. And it's rather wonderful. And what happens as you go down, you forget things. You forget who you are. And in that sense, you're studying who you are. And you forget who you are. And it gets washed off you, and somehow it doesn't seem so important. Whatever you're worried about. How should I file my taxes this year? And no doubt you'll solve that problem when you come to it, but at the moment you're sinking down, 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 many fathoms down, much further than the wreck in the Tempest, full fathom 5, 30 feet down. Thy father lies, those are pearls that were his eyes. And of his bones are corals made, nothing of him that doth fade, but doth suffer a sea change into something rich and strange. And you feel like something's changing in you too. And down, down, down you go into the pitch darkness, but you know where you are in the darkness, and you just reach out your hand. And there's a stone in it. And so, good. I have the stone. It's the stone at the bottom of the sea. It's the stone at the bottom of the universe. It's the stone at the bottom of your heart mind. It's the stone that everything comes from. And so you push up and you go back in reverse, and the shipwrecks fall away in all their intrigue and beauty and ruin. You come past the glowing fish, then the whales and the sharks, occasional squid flying by in a school. So you can see that you're in a meditation doing this. And you don't have to make anything out of anything. You're just floating up. And then you come to the boat, and you get in the boat, Then you go back to shore and you come back in the temple. And we're in a traditional temple, so you bow at the threshold and you bow in front of the Roshi, and you don't get up from the bow, but you just hold out your hand and there's a stone in it. And the Roshi laughs and says, "There's a signature on the stone. What does it say?" "What do you say? What does the signature say on the stone?" And then you answer that without thinking. You can't answer that by thinking about it. You just answer it. The response just, it's like life. The response comes and it's more like a dance, and it floats up out of the ocean. And then there are two other lines on the stone. And the Rishi says, well, one of them says, "Can't get wet," even though it's been in the bottom of the ocean. How come it can't get wet? And the Roshi gives you that, and you look a bit disappointed. So he says, "Okay, I'll give you another one as well." and then you can't get dry, always wet. What is always wet? What can't get wet? And so you go off, and that's your next koan. You go back into the temple, and you come back, and Jan is still head of practice sitting there, even though you've been gone for days, and your friends are sitting in the temple with you. Can't get wet, can't get dry. And somehow you know that your life is going to be all right. And that's what meditation, I think that's what meditation does, is you can start to trust your life, and you don't worry at the corners of it. And you don't think, how can I solve this or be better at that? You just have to trust your fate. Well, how can I trust that? Well, you can't. You just do. If you still can't trust it, you just have to go back to the bottom of the sea again. Such a long journey. And as many times as it takes you to bring that stone back, that stone at the middle of things. And I remember an Australian I think I remember who this was, but one of my Australian students had students. I think it was Susan Murphy, and she gave them this koan, and the person had this dream that she went into the bottom of the river, and she became a stone, and then she floated up. The stone floated up and flowed down the river, and then came ashore on a bank. And she said, "I realized that the koans do real things to us. Koans really transform us. And you cannot transform any other way except by being immersed and saturated." In the alchemy, that was called, there's a kind of dissolving happens, and you'll see illustration. I mean, alchemy as a system of images of transformation of the psyche, of the deep psyche, of the way of enlightenment, really. And you'll see illustrations of a king or a queen, or a king and queen together under the water, living under the water, being asleep under the water. And so when you can get under the water and even get to be dead under the water, it's not so bad. It's the beginning of, so things are starting to dissolve, and then you'll come back to life in the Sea of Ise. And we know that if we're trying to solve particular problems we have, grief, loneliness. I was an idiot last week, and will they forgive me? Rage that I've hidden from everybody, whatever it is, um, whatever it is we have, I can only console myself by adding numbers up. Great. And whatever it is, it will be healed by the immersion in the koan world. And you go down into the sea and things transform and you don't really know why. And so somebody today, um, somebody I have a long association with, we don't know very well, but I've always liked. And he says, well, I finally decided to take a teacher. And I said, great. And he's one of the women teachers who's taken. Said, "Have you met with her yet?" He said, "No." He said, "But I had this dream," and so all he had to do was make an appointment to see the teacher. And in the dream, he gets out of prison, and he and his teacher have this big fight, and then she helps him escape and run off together. It's really funny. It's really wonderful. But said, "Well, what did she do?" He said, "She just punched me in the face." And I thought, that's a real Zen teacher. And then she led me to help me escape. So, so I hope he doesn't mind me telling him telling that. But it's such a beautiful dream about Zen, you know, that uh, the escape just starts to happen, and we have help. All we needed to do was just turn a tiny bit towards help. Being punched in the face, maybe that's just part of it. Like, we have plenty of like difficulties. I certainly got punched in the face a lot in Zen. Year after year, getting, the whole Doksan room was like underwater, and all the healing happened underwater. And I'd go in, and the teacher would just look at me, big eyes in the dark room. And I would just look back, and I had nothing to say. And the teacher looked at me and then rang a bell. And that was my afternoon learning. I don't know, it took about a year or something, a little less than a year for that process, but I could tell something was changing. It was like I was sinking deeper, and I started to see whales and luminous fish in my practice equivalents. I started to see. I remember I didn't know if I was awake or dreaming, or asleep or meditating, and I started to not know whether I was meditating or dreaming. And I heard a singing, and I looked up, and it was raining, and it was in Hawaii, so it was fairly, and I just had a screen between me, but the rain was coming in sideways, just soft rain, like a blessing on my face. And Kuan Yin was appearing in as Orion, the constellation Orion, which was the big warrior. But there was Kuan Yin singing, chanting sutra, singing something that I couldn't understand. I thought, I don't know, maybe this meditation stuff isn't so bad after all. So you get sort of glimpses, and I knew that wasn't a dream that meant I was getting enlightened or anything, but it was a dream that meant somehow my meditation was on side of the project. It was good. That was good. Um, so we have to be, the healing happens by the grace of waters. And there's a lot of water in a well that has not been dug, water from no source ripples. There's a lot of water in the Miscellaneous Koans. And I remember this, I'd forgotten this till this very second, but years ago, we were doing a kind of, I know, I was teaching with a couple of people from different traditions who are healers and stuff. I don't know where this one came from. I think it was an African healing thing from one of the guys was African. And people would wade out into the water. There was a river and people would just wade out into the water, and you'd receive them, and they'd take a breath, and then you'd push them down into the water. And I remember I thought, well, I better have this done to me before I find out what it's like. And then I started coming up, and he just held me down there. And I thought, oh, that's just like a Roshi. That's what a Roshi does. And it was great. And then when I came up, it felt something real had happened. And the guy who instructed me said, the shaman said, who's dead now, but he said, you just hold them down, and then they sort of become, you can tell they come really there, and they become compact, and they're smaller than they were, like they're not fighting the water or anything, that's really there. And you wait till they do that, and then you let them up. And I thought, so I'm going to hold people down when they're not, yep. Oh, that's Zen again, so, and it's a nice thing to have a session, hold you down, hold you in the waters. So I think that's what we're doing. And you find there's a lot of there are different kinds of miscellaneous koans that have different kinds of ways of seeing the predicament of being human. Nearly all of them have some sort of predicament quality to them, say an impossible question or an impossible journey. And then you get impossible help on an impossible journey. So that's what we're doing. And you think, I'll never be able to solve that problem, which is true, you won't. But if you're in the waters, in the journey, it will be solved for you, and your dreams will help, and your meditation will somehow come clear, and you know that. I knew that I started to be able to answer koans. Like I thought, people would give me a koan, I'd know what the response was. But I knew that I wanted something more, that I was only like halfway in the passage, and that was a kind of nice thing. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. And I knew I could have just decided, well, that's good enough for a Kensho experience, but I didn't. I held myself down in the water longer. I stayed down in the water longer because I could tell that there was something. I could answer koans, but I couldn't answer with my whole being. And my whole being, I wanted to change, And so I stayed with it and stayed with it, and and uh, and I had a dream where I went down. There'd been a flood, and I went down among the flood into the flood, and after that dream, and then I found a temple, a secret temple, and things like that, the usual stuff, and so it was a remarkable thing for me because I'd had a lot of dreams about trying to escape from things. I had a lot of sympathy with my friend and his having to escape, and a lot of dreams where I was wanted for something and trying to escape. And what we're trying to escape from is our own mind and our rules and our, you can't do this and you can't do that. You should do this and you should do that. And no, I won't tell you what I'm feeling because I won't look for myself and all those rules, And then we're escaping from that. But what happens is we suddenly find that we're free. And it's a wonderful thing to be free because you hold out your hand and I don't know, there's gold in it. Your whole life is full of gold. So, and then you like the, the mystery and the darkness and all that stuff. And I made a lot of notes here, and then I didn't look at them because why not? Gold. One of the, I don't know if it's still in the thing. One of the old Roshis used to. He said there was a koan that said, if you practice the Zen upward step by step, you'll find that each step is equal. Yeah, so you feel stupid and you take a step, but the stupid thing was good anyway. If you feel stupid now, it's good. Knock it off. Stop judging it. And so you take his stick and you say, if you cut it here, it's gold. 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 All the way along, it's gold. Your life, all the way along, is gold. So I won't worry about the rest of my golden notes. And I'll stop there. Yeah. I don't know. Do we want to? Let me start the way I sometimes do on Sundays. Do any of the teachers or heads of practice or anything want to say anything? And then I'll open up more. Priming the pump here. Usually I say, Tess, do you want to say? And she says, no, I don't have to. That's really great. So you know how to, if you want to ask a question, do, but if you want to just enjoy the goldenness, this is kind of what I'm doing as I'm talking, It's not so bad being here, eh? Gold, gold, gold. There's a point to not, asking. There can be a point to asking questions. There's a point to not asking questions as well. You can't explain going to the bottom of the ocean and being transformed and finding the stone that is your own true nature, the source of all, the source of everything, So, shut up, John. It's great. It's wonderful being together. Thank you very much.